Man United are pound for pound the worst team in the league.
The lack of goals, the lack of points, the lack of performances.
Thomas Frank, by the way, is someone who, we ran this story yesterday on the talkSPORT website, definitely has admirers amongst that new hierarchy at Old Trafford.
In the last regime, Mr. Ten Hag would be probably under serious pressure. There's a lot of issues there, a lot of stress going on in that, I'm sure, in that dressing room and at that football club at this moment in time. Has Man United got a manager now? Have they got a coach? I don't know. And I never wanted to leave in the first place, but that's football, you know?
Hello and welcome to Inside Devils, talkSPORT's Man United show, keeping you up to date with everything coming out of Old Trafford. And after the trip to the Theatre of Dreams for the nightmare against Spurs, we're back in the studio. Joining me here is, of course, Alex Crook, and a very warm welcome to talkSPORT reporter and massive Man United fan, Anil Kandola. Now, you've probably been noticing that Angelina has taken a much-needed holiday after another dramatic week of Ten Hag and Manchester United. And we can't blame her. Can we, Alex?
No, absolutely. I think we'd all rather be sunning ourselves.
Oh, mate. And to be fair, I think she might be in Portugal, and I've just come back from there. There's not much sun there either, I'll tell you that. You've been spending some time around Wayne Rooney?
Yeah, I was at a tribute dinner for him in London last night. Really good evening. Told some great stories, including the fact that he used to listen to Susan Boyle in the dressing room before matches, which took me by surprise.
I mean, if it helped him play that good, then we'll take it, get some Susan Boyle in there now. Anil, great to have you on the show. Bad week, tough week again.
Yeah, pleasure to join you, gentlemen. It's never a good time, really, is it, to talk Manchester United at the moment? But look, we're here. Hopefully, we can, amongst ourselves, make ourselves feel a little bit better about the situation. But it's quite difficult at the moment, isn't it?
It is. It's quite difficult, and we need some help. And listen, we've got a lot to get through this week. And first up, we have to take a look at what happened at Villa Park on Sunday. So let's get the help of the main man, Mike Phelan. He is joining us. He's joined Manchester United in the dugout for hundreds of occasions. I'm delighted to welcome you in, Mike. Thank you for joining the show. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I've just been sunning myself in Spain for a week, so that's been great.
Did you get sun out there? Weather. Was it sunny?
Oh, plenty of sun, yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Gosh, well, we need some sun out here. Mike, big thanks for joining us. Listen, a massive game for Manchester United at Villa Park, a better defensive display for us, although we're struggling to get the ball in the net at the other end. In the Premier League, firstly, how do you assess our start to the season?
Well, I think it's like everybody else, really, disappointing. I think expectation was high, considering how the season ended, and new signings coming into the place. So I think everybody was expecting liftoff, and to progress quickly as possible, and that just hasn't happened.
It hasn't. Would you put that down to? Do you think it's the new signings? Is it a tactical setup? Is it teething problems because there's a new ownership, too much change, or is it just simply not good enough all round?
Well, I think there's a lot happened in a short space of time, that's for sure. There's been a lot of end of season speculation. There's been a lot of turnover within the establishment, if you want to call that, at Manchester United. There's a lot of change going on there. New sort of shareholding, the Ineos group. Like I say, new players that need bedding in. But in general, it hasn't lived up to the hype that everybody was creating. Yeah,
big words there from Mike there, Crookie. I mean, we saw at Villa Park, two centre-halves out, Matthias de Ligt and Martinez out, and Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire in. Is Ten Hag starting to show a lack of trust in his centre-halves or his defence in general?
You're showing a lack of trust in the signings. When you think about the fact the United bench was worth more than £400 million at the weekend, no Agate in the starting lineup, and bold changes as centre-back. I have to admit, I thought he'd gone mad when I saw those changes. But Johnny Evans has come in, he's led by example, he's got the Man of the Match award. Harry Maguire, to his credit, right back to the start of last season, never really lets United down now when called upon, but it doesn't say much about the trust that Ten Hag has in de Ligt and Martinez.
On a bit of positive, it was a clean sheet, a tough place to go. They're just off the back of beating Bayern Munich Villa. Do you see any optimism in terms of, a decent point on the road against a tough opposition?
Yeah, of course, it's valid. Aston Villa, of course, have had a brilliant start to the season, continuing what they did last year as well. But I think it's come to the stage now in Manchester United fans that we always try to see the positive, as all football fans try to, but when the negatives outweigh the positives so much, it gets to the stage where it's almost too difficult to do so. And look, at the end of the day, as you said, Villa, it's no easy game when you come up against Villa, especially at Villa Park. You know, you only have to look at their last couple of results before Manchester United to realise it's going to be a difficult game. But the optimism is very quickly gone. I think we're all victims of being really excited for a match day, going, right, Manchester United back on our screens, back on the radio, of course, if you listen like I do. And we have that optimism, but the moment, essentially, the ball is in play, the optimism very quickly diminishes, doesn't it? So, yeah, I think potentially it could be a good result, but then if you look at it in the larger aspect, it doesn't really do much for Manchester United at the moment, does it?
Yeah, Mike, we heard some praise there, and we've all seen the praise for Johnny Evans. You know, 36 years of age, got man of the match. I mean, you've worked with him for many years. He's got quite a few Premier Leagues to his name. You know, he's a really top pro. I mean, what was it like with your time working with Johnny Evans, and how, you know, pleased have you been? And I don't even want to say surprised, because you probably know his quality, but how pleased have you been to see him sort of, whenever he has played, he's been brilliant?
I don't think he lets anybody down. You know, that's his attitude. He's a Manchester United player. You know, he came in as a youngster, he's come through the system, he understands exactly what the club stands for and what is expected of you as a player when you play in the team. He's ready and available most of the time. It just so happens that he's being left out because of the choices the manager made in what his defensive structure wants to look like. You know, you mentioned Harry Maguire there. Two guys that will never, ever let you down. Not on purpose anyway. You know, sometimes circumstances of football matches dictate performance, but they have become integral again. You know, 1 minute they were there, they were involved, then they were out of it, no longer required, and now they're back in it. So it's a little bit topsy-turvy from that point of view. And I do get where you're coming from when it is a mixture of, you know, do we try to get the defence right? When do we get that right? Is that through a clean sheet, or is it through numerous clean sheets? How do we get the forward structure right? So there's a lot of issues there, a lot of stress going on in that, I'm sure, in that dressing room and at that football club at this moment in time.
I enjoyed what Johnny Evans said post-match as well about, you know, what it means to wear the Manchester United shirt and that pressure to perform. Mike, when you look around that squad and that dressing room, do you think there are enough United players who have that same attitude, or is that one of the main issues?
Well, pressure sometimes is what you make it. You know, it's there, you're at the place you want to be as a football player. You've been selected to be part of that fantastic football club. So all you have to do is make sure you're prepared well and prepared to do the best you possibly can. I think that doesn't go unmissed by the supporters at Man United. Effort is a fundamental requirement. That's without a shadow of a doubt. That's both on and off the field. You represent the football club in the right way. What manifests on the training ground usually shows itself in the matches. You know, and at the moment that balance doesn't seem to be right. But when you look at players of the quality, you know, and the careers really, you know, Johnny Evans is no spring chicken, Harry Maguire's not anymore, but they actually do know what's required. They do know how to defend most of the time, and they are reliable. They're definitely reliable. You know, they're 7 out of 10ers at least whenever they appear. And at the moment, there's probably needs to be more of those 7 out of 10ers than what they're getting.
Absolutely. Mike, I just wanted to ask you, in terms of the Aston Villa game as an isolated game, if you like, would you say that is a good result in the end, obviously taking into consideration how good Villa are doing? Or do you think Manchester United, despite the difficulties on and potentially off the pitch as well, that is a game that they should expect to win?
Well, I think from the game point of view, both teams looked a little bit dull, you know, in energy. I think that's been adamant or evident, should I say, in some of the Manchester United's performances. You know, there's been periods of intensity and then a lot of periods of no intensity. I think both teams reached that point at the weekend. You know, Villa were coming off the back of a fantastic, you know, game midweek against, you know, a top European team, back into Europe again. So it was euphoric. Obviously, I've been in situations where sometimes that has an effect in the next game. Either you can continue it or you drop off a little bit. I think in Villa's case, they probably stepped off the gas a little bit, but it's brand new. It was brand new to them. From Man United's point of view, could we say it was brand new to some of those players? Probably not, with the experience that they've got in competition and the quality that they've got there. Then it was disappointing. But overall, as a coach, sometimes, you know, a draw away from home is a good result in the circumstances that you find yourself in right now.
Mike, you've been there and done it, and been there countless times when we've had difficult starts to the season in the past. What plan was implemented? What was the sort of instructions given to players to sort of come out of a bad start to the season, or a culmination of bad results and a lack of confidence, etc.?
Well, as a unit, you've got to become a team. That's important. You're all in it together. That's fundamentally what team sport's all about. It's not just always the individual. I think it's a collective. You've got to get your head around the fact that things aren't quite where you want them to be, and then you have to work. You have to get your head into the situation of work on the things that can make you better, learn from your mistakes quickly. That's an important thing. If you want to be a top team in a top division, then consistency is one of those things. And we all know that games come around thick and fast. In the heyday, and we shouldn't harp on about the heyday, because I had probably one of the best spells as a coach at Manchester United than anybody's had. But I think when you look at it, consistency is vital. Consistency and mentality is really, really important to be a football player at Man United. Probably 75-80% of that is about mentality. What are you bringing to the game? The skills are there. That's why you're there as a football player. Purely, that's why you've been selected to be part of that great football club, is because you've got the required skills. It's just making sure that you can coach that out of them and improve them and be consistent in results.
It's the lack
of
of
performance.
It's the lack of goals, isn't it? Still only Southampton have scored fewer in the Premier League this season. When you look back to the team that you played in the early 90s and the team that you coached under Sir Alex, does that feel a bit alien to you, that there aren't many goals in this team? There's not much free-flowing, exciting football?
Listen, the money's in goal scorers, that's for sure, in football these days. That's where the big money seems to be. Yes, it's trickling itself down into better defenders that can play out from the back. We all know that now. But ultimately, matches are won through goals and not conceding goals. There's nothing new about that. That's the nature of the beast. So in the times of success, you have numerous goal scorers who can score, regularly. Simple fact. Man United in its heyday was definitely 4 strikers, 4 top strikers that could be used, in twos, in pairs. Nowadays, tactically, we don't see that. We see what we call forwards now rather than strikers. Is there a difference? Well, there probably is. Most teams now play with 1 up top, 2 wide. Where do the goals come from? The midfield players that add to that. Just in general, when you look at the stats, that you probably see all the time, and everybody keeps seeing them in the newspapers and on media channels, the stats just don't weigh up. They're not good enough. It's one of those things. They have to be better. You're in the team for specific jobs, for specific roles. Now, if you're a forward, as we call them now, your job is not just to create goals, it's to score goals. And when the opportunities come at a football club like Manchester United, then you have to take those chances. That is what ultimately you're judged on.
Absolutely. Mike, in terms of the coaching aspect of things, of course, we've spoke a little bit there about, players' mentality being so important. But from a coaching aspect, how difficult is it to see your team obviously put on performances that you don't exactly plan for? You work so hard in midweek for tactics and formations and roles of specific players. But from a coaching aspect, how difficult is it to watch performances like that? And how hard is it to almost lift yourself up and keep going in hope that it can improve?
Well, as a coach, you obviously work with the players day in, day out. So you're actually setting certain levels and standards and tactical issues. This is who we are, this is how we're going to play. And then in particular, it's up to the coaches, the managers and the staff to prepare that team to play against the opposition. Because ultimately, that's the game of football. You're playing against somebody who's going to try to stop you playing against them. So, you've got to do that work. But after that, you set that in motion and you set that tone, and that is the minimum requirement of who you are and what you are. So you have to deliver on those circumstances, and that comes from not just the players, that comes from the staff, from the manager or coach. I don't know which way around it is now. Has Man United got a manager now, or have they got a coach? I don't know. In my day, it was a manager, and then he had his coaches who coached, and the manager managed. Nowadays we get, coaches of the team, lots of different coaches, but ultimately who is leading that? Does the manager lead? Or does the coach lead? I don't quite know where we're at with that in the present day structure of football.
Yeah, we're still trying to work it out as well, Mike. Wanted to ask you about a few individuals. We do want to ask you about Bruno. He's under a lot of scrutiny right now as Manchester United captain. You oversaw Harry Maguire as captain. We want to ask you about Marcus Rashford, but we're going to start at Jadon Sancho. He's obviously on loan at Chelsea at the minute. We chased him for a long time. We know we didn't want to pay the money to Dortmund in the first summer, waiting for the next summer, big expectation. You've worked with him. Benny McCarthy has had his say in recent weeks about some of the reasons why it maybe didn't work out for him at Manchester United and may not in the future. What's your take on when you worked with Jadon, and do you think he deserves to stay at the club? Do you think he can have a future at the club, or is it best that he goes in a different direction and both part ways?
Jadon at the time, when Jadon was available at the time and it was big money, it started at less money but ended up big money. But Jadon at that moment in time was probably one of the best players playing in that position in Europe. He really was excelling. So he was definitely on the horizon for the possibility of Jadon joining Man United. That was done. The deal was done. Jadon was brought in, but with limited experience in the Premier League, believe it or not. He left very, very early from Man City, went abroad, and then obviously played his football elsewhere, but very, very unknown in the Premier League and how he would handle that. We had no issues with Jadon whatsoever. No issues at all. The only thing was to get him out there on the training ground, and get out of him exactly what we thought his qualities were. That didn't happen for some reason or other. It had bits of moments, but ultimately it didn't progress in a way it probably should have. But from Jadon's point of view, he's probably been struck down as well, like a few other players. And you mentioned Marcus Rashford there, where different managers have been at Manchester United over a period of time, and he probably was a little bit left unsure as to where he stood. This is hypothetical because I don't know what's actually gone on there. But ultimately, they've made the choice. They've sent him out on loan. He's been out on loan. He came back. Then they put him back out again. Who knows? It's up to Jadon now how he sees and from what he feels, and also how the football club determine whether he's progressing, whether he's good enough to come back. That's up to the new structure at Manchester United to decide over a period of time.
One player, I think it's fair to say, divides opinion, maybe even amongst United fans, certainly for neutral observers, is Bruno Fernandes, somebody else that you work with.
Yeah.
What credentials does he have for that captain's armband? And in some ways, do you think it weighs him down a bit, the burden of skippering this team?
I don't know, they say that in other sports, don't they? Sometimes in cricket and rugby, that you're a very good player, but once you take over different responsibilities, it suddenly fades. It's happened in international cricket, international rugby. But ultimately, Bruno has served the club really, really well. He came into the club where, he was probably an improvement on what was already there. Definitely improvement. The crowd took to him, the supporters took to him really, really quickly, and he produced. And he's been consistently producing that. He's just going through probably a moment now where he needs a little bit of help himself. He can't always give help to other people. He probably needs a little bit of help himself. And I think also taking into consideration the games he's played, he's been non-stop now for, I don't know how many years, 3-4 years. I don't know how long it is, both internationally and at club level. And there are times when players are a little bit off it, and he's set himself a high standard of delivery, and it's just not working out for him now. But I'm sure he'll be the first one to be thinking about how he can improve personally, but also as a captain, he'll be thinking how he can improve the team, the group. He never shies away from his responsibility, but right now he's just another player in that group of players that is not finding the true potential.
Mark, I really want to speak to you about Marcus Rashford. Now, of course, he enjoyed his most successful season under Erik ten Hag's first year with 30 goals, but it's safe to say under yourself and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he was a very vital part of that forward line. What do you think the issue is with Rashford? Do you think it's just a consistency thing where he does need to build up the confidence, or where do you think it doesn't quite go right with him at times in the season and throughout his career, I think it's fair to say as well?
Marcus is a bit of a conundrum at times. You know, everything Marcus has, he's worked at to get to where he is right now. I mean, he progressed really, really well. You know, he was coached and sort of, I wouldn't say manipulated, but certainly coached in a way that brought out all his strengths in the academy setup. Then he gets his debut and he hits the ground running. You know, and I think over a period of time, again, he's been exposed to a lot of different things, a lot of different, could you call it philosophies? I don't know, but certainly different tactical elements. But ultimately, Marcus has to produce now. We tend to think Marcus is a young kid, and he's not anymore. He's experienced, playing for his country, playing for Manchester United. He has to find a level of consistency that exploits his strengths. Now, is that something that he can do and work at? Or is that something that's alien to him? I don't know. I've never had that conversation with him over the past few years. But certainly, you know, is he happy? I don't know. You know, I've read things and heard things, you know, what his body language is like. Body language is, yes, good if you can get it, but it's not everything. It's how you produce your qualities on the football field. You know, you can be the saddest man in the world if you want, but if you're scoring goals and you're playing well, so be it. That's the nature of the beast. But Marcus just needs to find some consistency. What has been interesting is he actually probably has started to show, again, goal-scoring opportunities and a quality. And yet, when that comes, if you're a striker or a forward, as we say, the best thing ever is to keep playing. Keep playing. Keep doing it. You know, there's no point in keep doing it, practicing on the training ground, scoring goals when there's a game every 3 days there for you to put the ball in the back of the net. So I'm sure he would want that opportunity all the time. With that, he has to produce, you know. He has to be there to do it. And he's going through a spell, definitely going through a spell, but he's not the only one. So to single one player out, you know, or three players out that we just talked about, is pretty sort of damning in a way, but the team has to do better. The team has to do better.
Yep. Just quickly, one final question on Rashford there. You said obviously he needs to play to his strengths, if you like. He is a few years older than when you worked with him. If you had him now, what would you do to exploit them strengths of his?
Listen, he can run like the wind. You know, he can run like the wind. He can accept the ball in certain situations. He can shoot. He can shoot. I don't think he's got sort of a quality of a sort of a poacher or anything like that. But he can run like the wind. He's got power in his shooting. He just needs to get in front of goal. And the more times he can do that and hit the target, hit the fishnet, whatever you want to call it, then confidence grows. And I think he can practice those things. He has to improve, but all players have to improve. But he can do that. But I'm a big believer in strengths. You know, you get to the level of Manchester United and you get to the level of all the other top teams, strengths are what are important, not weaknesses. Why work on your weaknesses when you're 27, 28 years old, when you've got strengths in abundance? So it's that skill, that level of intensity of training, and bring your strengths to the table all the time for me.
We should probably address the elephant in the room in the form of Erik ten Hag. Are you?
Wonder when you get around to that one.
He's writing it down now. He's thinking, they haven't asked it yet.
He took his time there.
Are you convinced, as he seems to be, that he's the right man to take this club forward and get us back to where we all feel we should be?
Well, what's good is that, you know, he's positive in that aspect. His attitude is positive. What he will probably be thinking about quite a lot is how does he turn this moment around, and who does he do it with? You know, because I go back to, is he a manager? Is he a coach? You know, he was brought in as a top coach. Everybody talks about him as a top coach. I don't know the guy personally, so I can't talk about him personally. But, you know, from a coaching point of view, he gets rave reviews. On the field of play, do we see that coaching coming out? And you have to say at the moment that, you know, no. You know, the quality as a coach that he probably is putting out on the training ground is not reflecting itself on the football field. And as a coach or manager, you have to take responsibility for that. But ultimately, he's the man in charge. He's in the hot seat, and he still is in the hot seat. And as long as he's in that, why shouldn't he be confident of turning it round? But it will rely on a lot of things. Players, staff behind him, and the manager and his decision-making. Ultimately, that's what you're judged on, and results.
Mike, you speak about he's still in the hot seat and the people in charge of him still being in the hot seat.
A bit hotter. It is a bit hotter.
Yeah, it's a little bit hotter now. You know, at the time of recording, we know they're having meetings to assess where Manchester United are at. But I just wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on the new regime at Manchester United, headed up by Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos, and all the changes they've made structurally to the football club. And what was it like during your time working under the likes of Ed Woodward and Matt Judge and Richard Arnold, etc.? And was that structural reset needed, in your opinion?
Well, I worked under, firstly, with one of the best managers football's produced, in Sir Alex Ferguson. And in my time then, when I was a young coach, up-and-coming coach, and then progressing into being Sir Alex's assistant, then you start to understand the bit of detail that goes into running a football club like Manchester United. But that was run by David Gill, the owners, and Sir Alex Ferguson. The rest of us were working underneath to make sure that was a tight ship, that came to fruition, and it did. The second part of it, when I went back with Ollie, it was a different spell, different moment. You know, you can't harp on about what was great before and what's got to happen now. It was a different regime. One of the things that I would say is in the last regime, Mr. Ten Hag would be probably under serious pressure, serious pressure, because that was the nature of the beast at the time. And managers before Mr. Ten Hag, you know, suffered the same fate. And now it is a different regime. They are, I understand, trying to change things in the background. I know Dan Ashworth. I did my coaching badges with Dan Ashworth and the management course with Dan. So I know what his sort of ideas would be. You know, definitely he's adapted his ways from being involved at club level to international level, then back to club level. And I know a little bit about David Brailsford, and you know, I've had one or two chats with him sort of over his period of time in France and also through his cycling career. So I know roughly what their thoughts will be and how they want to make these small, well, they are turning out to be big decisions. They've just got to make more of them, and they probably didn't realise how many they had to make when they first stepped into that role. But that is Manchester United, and decision-making fundamentally is the ultimate test of what your credentials are.
Mike, do you think that the old regime would have maybe made the call on Ten Hag then? Do you think they would have stood for this?
Which old regime?
In terms of...
The first one with David Gill, or the second one with...
The second one with Ed Woodward, etc.?
Well, I think history tells you that when the Ed was in charge and the group of people around Ed and everything, those decision-making situations happened whenever they felt there was heat, you know, and they made those. I mean, good managers in the time before Ollie had felt that heat, and they lost their way, and the decision was to get rid of them. So yeah, it was different, but right now, I don't think the new regime will want to really go down that road again. I don't know. You know, you've told me that there's a meeting going on, whatever the outcome of that will be, but they certainly have to have a serious meeting about where they are at the moment and where it stands in their long-term strategy.
One of the things that Sir Alex was big on, I know, was the sort of family ethos of United, knowing all the staff's names and making it a real tight-knit community. From what I'm told, some of the changes that Ineos have made, cutting packed lunches for staff, the redundancies, maybe it's not a happy ship behind the scenes either.
Well, I hear things, and you know, I've got a lot of friends and people that are still, well, not as many now at Manchester United that I used to know, but certainly there are always issues at a massive football club. I don't know whether there's contentment there or there's a lack of it. What I do know is that they've made some pretty drastic changes. that in some areas of the football club probably needed to be made. But ultimately, they've chose to go down that certain path. And sometimes, some of the people that I've known for years are no longer there. And that saddens me in a way, because I think there's a lot of promising people there, a lot of good-hearted Manchester United people there that have probably, over a period of time, worked extremely hard for the football club. Ultimately, some would say, well, you've had your time, you've had your moment. They could say that about me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hold no grudges against that. But certainly in the grand scheme of things, how many people really are there now that understand Manchester United? Probably the only people that do are the older supporters, the supporters that have stayed through, the good, the bad and the ugly sort of thing. There's a film there somewhere, but there's a good, the bad and the ugly in Manchester United. And at the moment, it's not great.
Mike, just the last one before we let you go, because we know you're a busy man, and it's been fantastic talking to you during the show. It's been brilliant. Just on Ruud van Nistelrooy, he's been brought in this summer, as Erik has called him, as he said, I think to Rio Ferdinand, he was sort of saying he made that decision to bring in Ruud van Nistelrooy as his assistant. We saw some clips on social media, and sometimes things are blown up, yes, of sort of him and Ten Hag having a back and forth on the bench. What I wanted to ask you is, one, is that normal? Did you ever have any fallings out with Sir Alex on the bench during the game? And two, what's your thoughts on Ruud van Nistelrooy as a coach / potentially interim manager or manager for Manchester United in the future?
Well, there's a few questions there that you want me to answer. Ruud van Nistelrooy as a football player, outstanding individual, and a legend at Manchester United. He's gone into the coaching side of things. He's even gone into the management side of things. He's found himself now at a football club that even he possibly would say is completely different to when he left it. The talk about, is Ruud potentially the next manager? Who knows? There's a manager in place. That you can only answer that question as it arises. But Ruud was very individual as a player, very, very individual. As all centre forwards, I go back to this centre forward thing, as all centre forwards have to be. They're ruthless. Right now, when you see a coach, a manager, or two coaches or three coaches that they've got on the touchline now, certainly on the bench, talking away, you see a lot more of the intricacies of discussion and what have you. And sometimes that can be volatile. Sometimes it can be quite peaceful, because everybody's got a different take on possibly what they're seeing. In my day, I didn't sit too much on the bench. I more or less stood up in the front of all that, and that was, I didn't feel comfortable pecking the ear off the manager all the time when he's trying to watch the game and I'm trying to watch the game, and I just lent myself to the discussion from my own point of view. I thought that worked well in my situation, but to be one side of a manager and the other side, and you've got different, that can be quite confusing in some aspects, and you can read into it what you wish, but I think whatever the dynamic is at Manchester United, that's been chosen to by the strategists, the people above. Certainly the manager will have a say in who he wants his staff to be, and would have understood the dynamic of that when it comes to not only just the coaching side, but the strategic side on the football field. So, some people, the supporters like an animated manager, and some people like a quiet manager. You're never going to win that battle because we all want something a little bit different, but it makes great entertainment on the TV.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honour for you to share some of your insights. Wish we could have you for the whole hour. It's been absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for that. And just lastly, before you go, if that phone rings during this international break, it's Dan Ashworth on the other side of it. You've done your badges, would you come back?
Listen, I never wanted to leave in the first place, but that's football, So, no, listen, I've been fortunate to play there, coach there, and sort of be an assistant manager there and manage up within the club and manage down a little bit and be involved with some great people. They have to make history again. It's as simple as that, and go on that journey again. And it's not easy. You suffer along the way. It just so happens that, Manchester United are suffering more than most, but to the delight of some people, but not to the Manchester United supporters, because I think they want more and they want better, and they have to deliver on that.
Absolutely, Mike. Thank you so much for your time again. I'm sure we'll speak soon, Mike. Take care. Absolutely massive having Mike Phelan on. A big thanks to him. That was so insightful. Now, it's time for a brand new segment of the show where we've got to dive into the stats and tell you the biggest stories from looking at them. Joining us to take us through is the main man. We're going to have to start calling him Ryon Scott-Douglas. Ryan, what have you got for us this week, man?
How are you doing, lads? Why the long faces, eh? Right, so, we all know it's not been a fantastic start to the season. I think as a fan base, we can all agree on that. But what I wanted to do is delve into the stats, double down on it and see if between us, we can see whether, is it the players? Is it the manager? Is it a combination of the two? Maybe put some smiles on some faces. We won't. Spoiler alert. It doesn't make for good reading. So let's get on to it. And we're going to start with the disciplinary record here. I've got it here. So Manchester United are second currently in the total of Premier League yellow cards. OK, so you've got Chelsea just above them with 27, Manchester United with 24, and then just below them here, Wolves on 22. Now, from my perspective, Erik Ten Hag doesn't strike me as a get-stuck-in kind of manager. So I'll throw it to you, Flex. What does this say? Does it show frustration within the squad? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it shows a variety of things. I think it shows frustration at maybe not having the ball as much as we want to, things not going our way in games, not scoring, conceding goals, not playing the style of football that maybe the players feel comfortable playing. But also, it also shows that I think we're getting picked apart a lot. When you look at some of our fouls that get given and some of the yellows that get given, it's, Christian Eriksen in the first minute or two against Aston Villa, he has to pull back Rodgers because he's like, this is going to be a long afternoon. Rashford has a silly kick out. I can't remember who it was.
For his second yellow.
It could have been a second yellow.
Yeah.
Kobbie Mainoo actually, stats-wise, there was a point when he had the most interceptions. But, you look how much Manchester United's midfield gets run through. He's having to do a lot of chasing back towards the own goal, which means cynical fouls, tripping players up, pulling them back to not concede. So, I think it's a combination of a lot. And it also, I have to say, some of the refereeing has been disgraceful. I will say that.
Yeah.
Some of the yellow cards that are given / not given have not been consistent. But let's stay away from the refs because our biggest problem is not the refs.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you've struck it bang on there because we're going to elevate what you've said. We talked about the yellow cards. Let's get the next stat because we're actually going to isolate. And I love Kobbie, but we're just going to have a look at this. He has the most Premier League yellow cards for a midfielder in the Premier League. He's currently on 4. I think it's the second most this stage, apart from 2017. Can you have a guess who was getting yellow cards at this stage in 2017?
2017?
Yeah.
Crikey.
Throw it out to you.
I'm going to say Fred.
Rojo.
Oh, Rojo.
Yeah.
See,
so he had 5 at this stage, and Kobbie Mainoo's got 4. Now, I've got my thoughts on this, but I'm going to put it to you, Crookie, because I think you'd be perfect to answer this one. Why do you think this is? Is he over-relied on midfield?
I think it comes back actually to what Flex was saying about the gaps that United give in midfield. Martin Keown actually last week took the drastic action of seeing how big the pitch was at Old Trafford because he was watching games on television and there just seemed to be so much space. It's actually the 10th biggest in the league. There's a stat for you. So it's actually,
I'll leave.
But it's actually not as big as you think, but it looks big. And Kobbie is getting these bookings because he's being isolated. He's not got that strong support alongside him. We thought we'd get it with Ugarte. We still might. It's very early days. But he's being asked to do probably too much. I also think out of possession, he could improve. Like you, I think he's a generational talent. But when he hasn't got the ball, quite often he gets caught upfield. He's having to get back. Maybe he's the wrong side of his man, and that's when he goes lunging in.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. He's having to press their 6. He's having to go out to the wingers. He's having to intercept. So I personally don't think this is a Kobbie Mainoo problem.
I don't think he's a midfield brute.
Yes, exactly that.
He's not a destroyer in midfield.
No, those aren't his attributes, are they? So, I think we can all agree on that. So let's take it to the next stat, and this one makes your eyes water a little bit. Goals in the first 7 top-flight Premier League games is just 5, which is, to me, that is unbelievable. Only Southampton have fewer goals, and that's on 4. And then we'll, again, elevate this and take this to the next stat here. That's since 1972, which was 4 goals. Now, I'm going to throw this over to Anil. There's been lots of rotation in attack. Do you think, obviously, Erik ten Hag recently going back to that 4-2-4, do you think he has to trust a set 4, Anil? Do you think he just has to put his trust in them and just keep starting them?
Well, I think it's a wider aspect of I don't really think Erik ten Hag actually knows his strongest 11. I think if you were to say who are the ones that you rely on week in, week out, I'm sure there'll be a handful of players. But in regards to a starting 11, I don't think it's quite there. It's strong that you bring up the formation because I think this all leads, for me anyway, to the captain in Bruno Fernandes. I think he requires so much licence for freedom that it's often to the detriment of his fellow players.
Got you.
And you look at throughout his career at Manchester United, he's had the partnership with McFred. That wasn't quite good enough. Then that was taken apart. And then Casemiro was put in there alongside Fred. They obviously played quite well for Brazil, didn't quite work out. Now it's Manu, now it's Ugarte.
Yeah.
There's only one common denominator here. And it's quite ironic. You do say about the rotation there. I think the rotation rule only really applies to Marcus Rashford, doesn't it? But, look, I think there is so much to go off. But I think out of all of the amazing stats that you put there, I think the lack of goals is damning. Yeah. I think even under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer towards the end, everyone realised it was his time to go. But one thing you could never say was there was a lack of goals in the Manchester United team. And I think as a fan, I think that's probably the most hurtful, isn't it? The entertainment factor going forwards, it's just not there.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm going to take what you've said there. Let's get the next stat, please. We're breaking it down even further. It's your one-stop shop, this is, if you're a Manchester United fan, to see how things have been going so far. Not one player in the Premier League has scored more than 1 goal. I mean, that, for me, that's about as frightening as it gets. You've got De Ligt here on 1, Diallo on 1, Garner on 1, Rashford and Joshua Zirkzee as well. I'll talk about Joshua Zirkzee. Flex, I'm going to throw it over to you because, I mean, even the last time I was in the studio, Crookie was saying he's not a 20-goal kind of guy.
No, he's not.
I mean, he's got 1 goal. That was in the opening goal of the season.
Yeah.
What do you think about him? Where does he fit?
Well, what type of striker do we want to have? I think he is chalk and cheese to Rasmus, so in terms of that sense, it gives a completely different option. But when the goals dry up in the team, he's definitely not somebody you can look to say he can get us out of it.
Yeah.
Because he's not a high-volume scorer. The stats don't suggest that. The experience he has in the game don't suggest that. His style of play doesn't suggest that. What he is decent at is dropping off the front, linking up with players, bringing other players into the game.
Yeah.
But for that, you need runners. For that, you need potent, high-scoring wingers. For that, you need high goal-scoring midfielders.
Yeah.
Whereby he can be the Firmino, where he can be the Kai Havertz, who actually, ironically, is scoring a lot of goals now, to be fair.
Yeah, as well.
But do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't think that, and look, he's young, so we've got Erik ten Hag keeps reminding us that we've bought young, so they need time. But I don't think that top centre-halves in the Premier League see Højlund and Zirkzee and go, I'm in for one here. Zirkzee against Liverpool, I think Konate and Van Dijk no problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's not me being harsh on Zirkzee. I just think that's the absolute truth. Gabriel and Saliba won't be scared of Rasmus Højlund. They won't be scared of Joshua Zirkzee. And that's where it's the manager's choice. We heard Phelan say earlier on that focus on the strengths of these players. Right, we need to extenuate these strengths.
Yeah.
Because right now all we're seeing is the weaknesses. Rasmus Højlund coming in after a little while out. The touch isn't there. The ball's bouncing off him. He's just wrestling with defenders. Zirkzee just dropping off the front, bit passive, okay. It's not engaging centre-half. So Ten Hag needs to work on a system that makes these players look better than what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to stay on this stat for too long because it's depressing.
Yeah, it's very damning, mate. But get the next one.
Bruno's not on there as well.
No.
Bruno's not on there. Bruno has more red cards this season than goals and assists. As Crookie, what do you think? Is that another sign of frustration? We go back to it. Do you think he's just a frustrated player right now?
Yeah, I'm not sure he's enjoying, the role that he's got in this midfield. I think there's almost too many number 10s, isn't there? Because Zirkzee wants to play in there. Mason Mount, when he comes on, wants to play in there. The wingers want to cut inside as well. So it makes the pitch very narrow.
Yeah.
Rasmus Højlund quite often can drop deep as well. So I think what you're seeing from Bruno, and it's come out in those 2 red cards. We disagreed about the Spurs one. I think it was a petulant kick out. I think that was a sign of frustration. I think he deserved to go. Obviously, the PGMOL and the FA don't agree because that red card got overturned. But even the one in Porto, he's already on a booking, which again was born out of frustration. He knows if he doesn't make contact with the ball, it's high foot in Europe, you're going to be off.
Yeah.
And I think that just tells you that his brain's a little bit scrambled at the moment. He's disappointed that he's not reaching his own standards, and the team around him certainly aren't either.
Yeah, he's a polarising figure, but I completely agree with that high foot thing because he's smarter than that.
Stupid.
Yeah, and we've seen he's smarter than that. Yeah, exactly. Let's move on. Get it out of my face. Next one. Points from the first 7 league games. We've moved on to this one now.
There's no good ones.
There's no good ones. And we know this. Of course, this is what we're staring at all the time. So it's the Premier League table. And there's just 8 points accumulated currently. So all those stats, we're talking about the disciplinary record, we're talking about the goals. It's not translating well into the league table. And I'll elevate it. Let's move on to the next one as well. That is the fewest since 89-90. Where it was only 7 points, and we finished 13th in the league.
That was around the time the Fergie banner was famously unfurled, wasn't it?
Exactly that. It was an Alex Ferguson season. So, I mean, there'll be people who are defending Ten Hag who will look at that, go back and say, you know, Sir Alex Ferguson, he had a tough time of it as well. But it is the worst start to the Premier League season ever for Manchester United. Anil, I hate to hit you with this question because it is a deep one, but are Erik Ten Hag's days numbered when you look at this being the worst start in the Premier League?
See what you did there, numbered stats.
Very good, yeah, see?
He's almost too good for his own.
Didn't even know I was doing it. That's how good I was.
That's how good he's
Peach
got
iced
to
teas.
Oh, not on camera, Crookie. I don't want people knowing I drink peach iced teas. He's lying. That's not. Yes, so Erik Ten Hag, are his days numbered?
Yeah, I think, look, even the most optimistic and loyal Erik Ten Hag supporters will see just the graphics and the numbers that you've gone through there.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to almost argue against it. You know, the lack of goals, the lack of points, the lack of performances. There isn't much we can really go off in regards to try and support Erik Ten Hag. I think the only sort of narrative or explanation as to why we would keep him at Manchester United is because we don't want to keep going down the route of sacking managers. And I understand that. We want change. We want to stay loyal to an individual. But 2 points there. Realistically, has he deserved the loyalty of the Manchester United fans, especially just this season? And secondly, by that nature, if I was in charge of Manchester United, I would be kept as well because we can't keep sacking the managers. There needs to be a bit of evidence that we need to stay loyal to him. I think this was his big chance. It was almost a clean slate. You had a really good first season, difficult second season, which was masked a little bit, well, quite a lot by the FA Cup. Let's see what the third and most determining season would be. And here we are, still talking about the same problems.
Yeah, exactly that. And you look at it, he's averaging 1.14 points a game in the Premier League this season.
Should be enough to stay up.
We need to get to 40 points, mate.
I'm not sure.
Do you know what? You're absolutely
scrap.
right. You're absolutely right, Crookie. Is there a chance we finish outside the top 10?
Yeah, on current form.
Yeah.
You know, there's some good teams in this league.
Think about what we're saying here.
There's better organised teams, there's better coached teams, not necessarily better players, man for man, but there are clubs like Bournemouth, for example, who know exactly what they're doing under Andoni Iraola. They look upwardly mobile to me.
Yep.
I saw Brighton come back from 2-0 down to beat Spurs at the weekend, which was hilariously funny, obviously. But, I mean, you've got to say they're in much better shape to challenge for Europe than United are.
I have to say as well, for me, apart from teams that you go, they've just come up from the Championship, so yeah, you expect them to sort of be around the bottom three.
Yeah.
Man United are pound for pound the worst team in the league. For me.
Yeah.
Like for money spent, the stature of the club, you know, we've won a couple of trophies, we've been in the mud for a while. Pound for pound, with what the expectation is and what we're trying to get away from, I think we're the worst. I honestly do think that. And that's not sensationalism, it's not over. When I look at us and look at how we're coached, with the players that we've actually gone on to buy, the players that we've said aren't good enough anymore, Fred, we need to move on, we need to move away from Maguire, take the captaincy off him, let's get rid of Scott McTominay, these aren't Man United calibre. With all that into consideration, for the players we've brought in, with the manager we've stuck by, pound for pound, I think we're the worst team in the league, mate.
So do you boys think then, in regards to what you've just said there, the squad at the moment at Manchester United, do you think if they were better coached, they have got a team capable of even getting a top four finish?
The players are better than the results and the performances, but it's actually quite embarrassing. You just look at the league table, let alone the numbers behind it. Fulham, Brentford, Forest, all look streets ahead of United at this moment in time. And that's no disrespect to any of those clubs.
Brian and Brentford scored more goals than us.
Oh, Flex, don't hit me with that.
I don't know if that's on there.
That's awful.
Brian and Brentford scored more goals than Manchester United.
He's probably done all of that.
So's Raul Jimenez,
as well.
That's what I mean. So it's like we're breaking every single metric possible. And even one before that, you said about since 89, 90.
Yeah.
Also, the stat before that, Erik done his own record
He did.
Because he's got the second worst start as well.
You can't say he's not a record breaker.
There's no injuries anymore.
He'll be telling us that at the end of the season.
Extra 200 million spent. 10 games in all comps. Where are we in the new Europa League thing? 24th or something like that?
No, I think we're just about in the playoffs.
We don't look at the table. I'm not looking at the table.
What other metrics do we need? Out of 10 games, won 3.
Do you know what I think we need to do? I think for the next time, Ryan, you appear on this show, we want nothing but positive. So probably just go back to the first season.
We'll only wheel you out when we win.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Great idea. I hate to double down on what you've just said, but I'm going to do it because let's take it to the next stat here. Just looking at these last 3 Premier League games, Aston Villa 0, Man United. By the way, that was an absolutely stinky game. What a 90 minutes that was. And then, of course, the Man United 0, Tottenham 3. I was there for that one. It was worse in person. It really, really was. Crystal Palace 0, Man United 0. Which out of the 3, and here's a positive Anil, so I'm going to go to the positive. That was probably the best game because we created so many chances. But then you talk about Rashford and everything like that. I mean, it just goes back. We go around in a full circle. The previous worst goalless run under Ten Hag was in December 2023. That was a 3-0 loss to Bournemouth. That was Liverpool 0, Manchester United 0, and West Ham 2. United 0 as well. Why? What's happening here? Why is this happening? Why is there so many blanks? Let's take it to the next stat and have a look. Big chances missed. This is where we're going to have a look at it.
Oh, we've made the top 4.
Yeah, exactly. Clip it. Take a picture. Arsenal and Spurs joint for big chances missed. They're both on 18. And then you've got Manchester United and Liverpool here, joint second with 17. Now, there's a few things here. There's a few things you can go off the back of. And I'm sure people that will be defending Ten Hag will look at this and say, well, we're creating the chances. It's just the players that aren't finishing it. And I'll throw it to you, Flex. What do you think here? When you see 17 big chances missed, how do you read into that? Do you see that as a positive or do you see that as a negative?
It's a negative. It's a negative because you're missing. You're at the top for one of the worst metrics. But the other teams that are on there can also boast that they've scored a lot of goals.
Yeah.
And they're way higher up. Maybe not Spurs, are only a couple of points behind them. But in terms of the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal, they've got quite a lot of clean sheets and they're scoring loads of goals and they're where they want to be in the league. So we can't really use that as a positive, but to bring it into context and not just be negative, that is where you do shift a lot of the blame in this isolation to the players. If you are in positions to score goals from good positions, good chances, where you're expected to hit the back of the net from position X or position Y, that is your fault. The manager has coached the team in those moments to manipulate the ball, to be on the front foot, to create chances, and you are creating them, but you're just not finishing them off. What do you want? Do you want Erik Ten Hag to jump out of the seat and put the ball in the back of the net for you? I get that. But that is quickly countered by the rest of our play. That might be within 15, 20 minutes. If you take the Crystal Palace game for an example, right?
Great one.
First half, we say, right, cool, you know what? We should have scored at least a couple. Yeah? But then guess what? What does Glasner do? He makes a couple of changes, and in the second half, the game is no longer like that.
Yeah.
Been out thought, been out tactic, been out subbed. So it's not like if you keep doing that in every single game, you will keep bashing the door down and get through it. The problem is we saw that against Palace, high XG. Saw it, not really against Villa. Definitely not against Spurs.
It's the decision making, isn't it? It wasn't a chance miss, but Garnacho on the screen there. And I think we are right to focus on him because he's missed a lot of really good opportunities. But he also missed the chance to win the game for United at Villa Park. Yeah. With that breakaway move. Yeah. Oh. It was a simple pass into the centre. And Bruno Fernandes, not scored this season, as we mentioned, he'd have had a tap in and suddenly the world would look a lot rosier. You've got to trust the players to make the right decisions at key times. And too many United players aren't doing that. Well,
we've looked at stats. It kind of is all centering around goals. The more we go on to it, big chances missed. No one scored more than one. Crookie, I'll put it back to you. Whether it's Ten Hag or not, where do you see the goals coming from?
Van Nistelrooy on the bench, maybe?
Well, yeah, but when you said Ten Hag can't jump on the pitch and bring him on, Ruud could.
Yeah, we'll get Ruud on. Yeah,
it's a problem because we've talked about it already. Xerxes' lack of goals. Højlund got 16 last season in a team that didn't really create him too many opportunities, but I think his confidence, having been taken out of the team towards the end of last season, looks a little bit dented. Rashford, I think, has found a little bit of form. Gets taken off at half-time, obviously, because that's what you do when a player scored a goal and made another one. But
for rotation.
Yeah, I don't see this United as a goal-laden team. And actually, go back to last season, I think they scored 57 goals in the Premier League. last season, 57, 58. So this is a problem that's been going on for a long time.
I do think, sorry to cut across there, I think, of course, when players get into them positions, they need to finish it. They need to do better to almost earn their stripes in regards to scoring the goals and creating assists and all of that. But I do look at Manchester United so often, and it almost seems like they don't actually know what they're supposed to do. Whose role is it? You were saying there, obviously, a little bit earlier ago about Xerxes likes to drop in a bit deep. Even Hojlund likes to do it on the odd occasion, go one-on-one with the defender and make some space in behind. But is that the role of Rashford and Garnacho? Is it get the ball early to Rashford so he can attack the players? Is he meant to make the run without the ball and we find him there? What are they actually supposed to be doing? What is the method to the madness? Because right now it's just madness.
Yeah. Well, we've focused a lot on the final third. Let's take this next stat now. Is this man saving Erik ten Hag's job? That is the question.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, because he tops clean sheets in the Premier League this season. You've got, and look at the company that's around him there. It's Alisson and David Raya with 3 each. Andre Onana 4. Now, look, he was bought in. Again, we talk about these missing pieces of the puzzle. We've talked about it maybe with Ugarte and Onana, passing out from the back. He's had to go long quite a bit this season. There isn't really many midfield options. He's not passing it out from the back as we'd like him to do. He's going long, so maybe the passing's not there. But when you talk about the shot stopping, some of the saves that he has done this season have been out of this world. Again, Anil, throwing it to you here. Is he saving Erik ten Hag's job here?
Do you know what? I put you a task earlier, didn't I, of finding some positives, and I think this is a positive. I think Onana, look, the scrutiny he had last season, he had some really high-profile mistakes and some difficult games last season, but this has gone under the radar completely. I was almost surprised when I saw that statistic because he has got the most clean sheets of the season, and it's almost quite similar to when David De Gea had the most clean sheets at one point and people wanted him out. Yeah. But look, as an individual, he'll be more than happy with that, and it does make you worry a little bit, doesn't it? If he wasn't to get so many clean sheets, would we sit here talking about Erik ten Hag, or would we potentially be talking about a different manager?
Absolutely not, mate. At Southampton, mate, our confidence was already on the floor.
Oh, that was a big moment.
Cameron Archer scores that penalty, and this is why you're talking about how important Onana is. If he scores that penalty, yes, I know Southampton, poor side, might come back, but we know our team as well.
Yeah.
And
we would have lost.
We probably would have lost that game. That double save from Eddie Nketiah and then Sarr against Crystal Palace. He's not really got any right to make the second save. First save, yes. Second save, no. If we'd have lost that game, again, that would have been another loss on this run. And that you're talking Erik ten Hag probably would have gone. So I think actually, in isolation, because up until this international break, those two saves, those two games, Southampton and Palace, even though one was a win, one was a draw, absolutely, I think he's helped contribute to Erik ten Hag still being here.
It's interesting what you said about he's being more direct, because that wasn't the case at the start of the season, was it? In that Community Shield, there was a lot more passing out from the back. Fulham on the opening weekend of the season. And again, that tells you that already Ten Hag is sort of in survival mode, because he's ditched those philosophies, those principles of how he wants the team to play. He's now just trying to grind out results. He goes back to the double change at the back of the weekend. That wasn't a double change made with a long-term plan, because clearly Johnny Evans isn't part of the long-term future of Manchester United. It was Erik ten Hag clinging on to his job for dear life.
Yeah, it's almost his safety philosophy. Yeah. It's almost his safety philosophy, isn't it? He's reverted back to it because obviously he knows his back's against the wall. I'm just going to compare it to Onana's last season. He got 9 clean sheets. Before that was David De Gea, who got 17 clean sheets. I just want to throw that out there.
In that season, that was his last season, wasn't it?
Yes.
And he had some absolute howlers in that season. I remember away at West Ham, Ben Rama went through. But then in his very last game, he saves a penalty from Mitrovic, boots the ball into the Stretford end. And obviously David De Gea went on to leave. But we weren't a good team.
No.
We weren't a good team. You can have an individual honour, because you're doing all right. Hence why Rasmus Hojlund last year, 16 goals, Man United finished 8th. Negative goal difference. So it's good for Onana, because he needed that, to be fair, especially the start he had and the scrutiny on him. I still have some... I still get a bit worried. Like every sort of 8 to 10 games, he might have a boo-boo in there. But to be fair to him so far, he deserves his flowers, and I think we have to give him that.
And the one thing I'll say about Onana, just before I finish as well, personally, I love the way he comes out and speaks to the media. I actually think he's got an absolutely brilliant personality. He takes all the negativity on his shoulders as well. So, yeah, he firms up to it. But lads, to summarise, work to be done. What do you think?
Decisions to be made.
We knew that without your stats.
There you go.
He's useless,
Decisions to be made. Okay, nice one, Ryan. Thank you for the insight for that one. It's safe to say you're definitely looking for a job for the backroom staff now, aren't you? That's as analysis. That's what he's going to be. Analysis. That's going to be you.
I'm going to get Phelan on the phone and see how I get in there.
Get the band back together. That's the one.
Honestly, come and join us on the panel.
Okay,
mate. Get back where you belong. Well, before we wrap up, we're going to look ahead to the next week as we go into the international break. Crookie, we know there's a pre-scheduled meeting with Ineos taking place to discuss loads of things at United, but surely Erik ten Hag's future will be high on the list. With or without Ten Hag, will we see much difference, do you reckon, in Man United, regardless of who the manager is this season, or is it just embedded in the club?
Well, I think the issues are deep-rooted. I've said all along they go deeper than the man in the dugout. Obviously, we've got this new boardroom structure now, but in fairness, one of the things that Sir Jim Ratcliffe said last week was that they've only been in place for a matter of weeks, not even months yet, and I think he's right about that, so we have to be patient. Spoke to Owen Hargreaves, actually, at the Wayne Rooney tribute night last night, and he was saying the same, that it's going to take time. There isn't a magic fix. But I think somehow, if it's Erik ten Hag, if it's Ruud van Nistelrooy, if it's another manager, they've got to instill the confidence and belief in these players that better days are ahead. There's one thing saying it, as Erik ten Hag does after every defeat, but you've got to get the players believing in the process, and I'm not sure many of them do at the moment. Yeah,
it's going to be... I think if we just carry on as we are with Erik, we're just waiting for the inevitable. I really do think that. But then you look at the squad we've built, Anil, and where we're at with it, how much does a new manager improve what we've got? Because look, in the summer, I don't know where you was at with it, actually. It'd be interesting to know. A lot of us were sort of saying, it's a decent window. There's an upgrade in quite a few positions there. He's got everything he needs.
Well, all of the players that Man United signed were all separate saviours, weren't they? And the ones that the final piece of the jigsaw, which will elevate Manchester United to the glory days. But it's I think, one of the most defining decisions that Ineos will make during their Manchester United tenure, however long they're at the club for. The way that they handle this, because I think, look, unless a miracle happens for Erik ten Hag, he miraculously turns everything round and gets them back to where they want to be. I do believe his days are numbered, whether that's going to be in the next few weeks or a few months or even
a few hours.
Or a few hours. Exactly. But I think the handling of this situation, I do think, deserves an element of criticism. I think if Ineos were never in the picture and it was just the Glazers handling this, I think there would be a lot more uproar. But of course, Man United want to be a bit more optimistic. But you look at the names that Manchester United were linked with, even when in the summer Ineos were reportedly speaking to several managers. You had on one end of the spectrum Thomas Tuchel all the way through to Gareth Southgate potentially. What do them two managers have in common? We need to see a strategy and a clear idea and identity of what Ineos want to do. And I think ultimately the way that they handle the Erik ten Hag future at Manchester United will set them up in good stead, or hopefully not anyway, bad stead.
Yeah, Ryan, in this international break we've seen Mazraoui, Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo pull out of their respective nations' side. How much of a concern is that if those three are injured long term in terms of what that means for us?
Yeah, it's a big concern. There's no getting away from it. I mean, in fact, I read earlier that it's the first time that there's not been a Man United representative in the England setup. That's in a long time.
1976 was it?
Decades, in decades. So, which is damning. And not having Kobbie Mainoo, who, by all accounts, we've talked about how over-reliant we are on him. He's picking up... the way I look at it with that yellow card stat that I presented earlier, he's picking those up for us because he's being stretched left, right, centre. So, yeah, it is a concern. And coming out of the international break, I just don't want to get pumped. That's kind of where we are.
Brentford at home.
Exactly.
And Bremer scores after 20 seconds every game, doesn't he?
Ten Hag's already gone through that once in his time,
exactly.
Hasn't he?
Exactly. I just don't want that. In fact, since Erik ten Hag took charge, no other manager has conceded 3 or more than him. It's happened 24 times. So, I mean, the bar's low, to be honest with you. We just want to see good performances. That is all we want. I would almost say indications and signs of life, of styles of play and performances are better than 3 points right now. I just want to see something. And clearly, we can hear about how Erik ten Hag is a coach. He's a great tactician, he's a genius. I want to see that because I haven't seen that now in a couple of seasons.
Crookie, what's the first thing that needs to change on that first game back, whether Ten Hag's there or not? Look, I think he probably will be. It feels that way. We'll wait and see in the next 10 days or so. But first game back, what's the first thing he's got to change?
Well, they can't concede after 2 minutes, as teams who play Brentford tend to do, because, again, the positivity is just going to be sacked out the place, isn't it? What do we need to see?
How long have you got?
Yeah.
I think we need to see a bolder, braver performance than we saw at Aston Villa, because actually we've not laboured on it too much. I think Villa were there for the taking. You know, they looked emotionally drained after what happened against Bayern in midweek.
Yeah.
I think a better team probably would have put them to the sword. So what I don't want to see is this survival football that I mentioned that I feel like Ten Hag has gone into. I think Ineos are going to have to tell him one way or another, look, we're going to back you here, and then maybe he doesn't need to play survival football. He's gone off on holiday, by the way. So he's not overly...
Is that strange? I know it's international break, so there's a bit of time, you know, to do...
Yeah.
You know, there's still some players who didn't go to international break who need coaching, who need interventions. And last time I checked, United are in a really bad position. So lots of... I'm not saying, you know, all work and no relaxation with your family, etc. But did you expect to hear that he'd gone on holiday?
I think he's got a theory, hasn't he? I think last time he went on holiday, he got a contract extension.
So Jim turned up in Ibiza.
If I go back to Ibiza, I might get an extra year. So I think that's what he's going for.
I was going to say, Crook is the inside man. Do you know where he's gone? Because I'm just looking at the gossip.
I don't, just a few days, apparently.
Yeah,
but
okay.
It did surprise me when I heard that for the reason that you've said. However, I guess maybe if you're trying to look on the positive and find a reason for it, maybe giving the players a few days away from the training ground just to clear their heads and get away from that negativity. Maybe that's not such a bad idea.
Anil, 7 games in about 3 weeks when we do get back out of the international break. Is that a good thing in terms of the games can keep coming, you know, quick and fast, so that anything you want to get rid of you can iron out straight away? Or do you just see that as could be a spiral though, and the games keep coming and you don't get better and you just lose or draw?
Well, that's the risk, isn't it? We always hear about people in the game that it only takes one victory to really go on an impressive run. But you know, we were talking just before
that against Barnsley, didn't we?
Exactly that. You know, I know we joke, but that's exactly it. We looked at the set of fixtures after the Liverpool game, and we thought, okay, Spurs might be a little bit difficult, but all the other games are probably quite manageable for Manchester United to put a good run together. But we haven't seen that, so I think just as important as it is to get a victory to really build on, it could be just as worrying on the other side if they do get off to a defeat when the international break is over. Exactly that. You know, we're playing probably the team you don't want to play in the first couple of minutes in probably across Europe right now. The way that they're banging in the goals, and they're scoring 1 goal in the first minute. The way Man United are playing, they could be 2 or 3 down in the first few minutes.
And Thomas Frank, by the way, is someone who we ran this story yesterday on the talkSPORT website, definitely has admirers amongst that new hierarchy at Old Trafford, so he might be seeing this as a bit of a job audition.
Mate. Thomas Frank's going to bring his A game. I think for me, I actually, look, Ineos we've given praise for in the right moments. So when they first came in, ratified in February, the summer they had and the decisions that they made to get the structure in place, some of the transfer dealings, showing Bayern Munich that we're not just going to roll over, we're going to, get that deal down from Mazraoui and De Ligt together. What they did with Dan Ashworth in terms of, waiting and getting him for a price they deem necessary. Those are good things, getting the old hierarchy out and bringing a new one in. We praise them correctly for that. But I think this bit here, where a lot of fans can go, this is not working with this manager, we need to see Ineos make a big decision. We've been told by Ineos themselves and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, this is not about making money. I don't care about making money off this investment. I know businessmen say that. Oh, he will to some extent, but it's about winning. Well, let's see it.
Yeah.
Like, do they need to show, Ryan, that actually we've made a mistake by backing Erik Ten Hag, and we did back him to the tune of 200 million in the summer, but we're not afraid to put our hands up and say, right, we're ruthless, this isn't good enough? Or do you want to see them say, no, we stand by this decision, we know it's not popular, but strong leadership is going against the grain when the chips are down, and we think he can turn it around?
I don't think there should be a black and white on it, I'll be honest with you. I think there can be a grey area sometimes, and if they need to adapt and improvise as they go along, then that would be a green flag in my opinion. But I'm completely with you, Flex. That's a red flag. The way that they've just handled this situation, it's a red flag. And I said this to you guys off camera. That is what we're doing for a living now as Man United fans, is ignoring red flags. We ignored the way they handled the summer. We tried to spin it in a nice way. We did. And we said, they're re-interviewing Ten Hag. They just want to see if there's better options out there. That's a bit of a red flag. Ten Hag's transfer strategy, only getting people in who he's managed before, who he trusts. That's a red flag as well. Making Mason Mount a priority signing, that's a red flag as well. The tactics we're seeing, that's a red flag as well. And now Ineos Group come in and they're supposed to change things. and the way that they've handled this situation can be perceived as a little red flag as well. So I think it would be a green flag if they adapt and improvise and do what's necessary.
It's reactionary at the end of the day, isn't it? I think they've looked at a situation again, and ultimately Ugarte was, in my understanding, was the number one target for get positions. He was the one that they really wanted to
Waited
get
on him as well, didn't they?
Deadline day he came through. If you know that's your guy, go out and get him. And I understand you want to be patient and get the best deal possible, but with the amount of work that this board has got to do, we were promised best in class. Have we seen that so far?
No, we definitely haven't. Right, before we wrap up, I want a name from all of you. I'm going to put you on the spot. Next Manchester United manager, if you could pick who it was going to be, Crookie, who would you choose?
That's a tough one because it feels like deja vu. You know, we're almost where we were in the summer in that I think they know deep down that Erik Ten Hag isn't the long-term solution, but is there a ready-made replacement out there? I definitely don't want Gareth Southgate. I've been quite public about that.
That's quite unanimous, I believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just about.
Probably Thomas Tuchel would be my choice, but that comes with risk attached.
Yeah, a lot of people online and in comments have all said, why do people think Thomas Tuchel? Man United fans say no, a lot of them do. Anil, you?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Crookie said there. First and foremost, just not Gareth Southgate. I think with Thomas Tuchel, it's almost like a holiday romance, isn't it? For a couple of years, he'll bring some good times, but we know long-term it probably isn't going to last.
But maybe that's the modern way with United.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
this idea of recreating a Sir Alex Ferguson-style dynasty, maybe that's never going to happen
It's not
again.
going to happen. And I think at the end of the day, we want feel-good football. It was exactly what you were saying. We want to enjoy watching Manchester United play football again. When was the last time we actually enjoyed a half of football? Never mind for a full 90. And I think Thomas
The FA Cup
Tuchel...
final was all right.
long time ago now, Crookie. It's far in the distance. But look, I think Thomas Tuchel will bring that. He's a disciplinarian. He's someone who won't be shy to bench potentially Bruno Fernandes or struggling players. So I think he will bring that. But after we spoke to Mike Phelan, it'd be hard to say no to him as well at the moment.
Yeah, really quickly, Ryan, for you.
I'm glad I'm at the bottom of the panel because I'm not sure about Tuchel. I'm really not sure about Tuchel. I don't know if he's the right man. If I had to get rid of Ten Hag and pick somebody, and this is still a punt, so I do kind of empathise with Ineos, I would put Ruud van Nistelrooy in charge as interim until someone frees up in the summer.
I think that's the most likely outcome.
Yeah, I would do that because I just don't know if Thomas Tuchel's the man. There's some positives. He's the disciplinarian. He can come in. He can put them in check. But long term, I'm not sure. If we can get him on a 1-2 year contract, maybe. But that probably won't happen. So answer your question. Go on, Ruud.
The issue you've got with Tuchel as well is that he held talks in the summer. It's my understanding that as much as United decided to sit with Ten Hag, Tuchel didn't really fancy the job. He didn't appreciate the new structure. I think he was overly impressed with the list of transfer
Got
targets.
leverage now, though, isn't he? If they come knocking.
You need me, don't want me.
I'm not sure enough has changed for him to take the job.
Yeah, okay.
You can't finish without answering yourself, Lex. Who
Yeah,
do you want to say?
absolutely.
For me, Thomas Tuchel, I've been very vocal about that.
Tuchel?
As we was at the choice point when we didn't know whether Ten Hag would stay or go around the FA Cup final, I said, well, I don't want De Zerbi, I don't want Potter, I don't want Southgate. I said, get me Tuchel, I'll take him. I've met a lot of people face-to-face and online who say, Flex, absolutely not. It can't be Thomas Tuchel. And I know a lot of you guys may echo that sentiment. Get involved in the comments below and let us know who you think should be the Manchester United manager. Should it still be Erik Ten Hag? Is this all this fuss about nothing? We need to calm down and trust in the vision. Let us know whilst you smash a like on the video and subscribe to talkSPORT's YouTube channel as well. That's all we've got time for on this week's Inside Devil. A huge thank you to Alex Crook, Anil Kandola and Ryon, the stat man, Scott-Douglas. And of course, the legend Mike Phelan, who joined us earlier on. It was a fantastic show. We'll see you on the next episode of Inside Devils. Take care.